Hello. Welcome back to my channel. It's been a minute, sorry, been moving countries, but I'm back. And today I want to talk about the social media activist and social media activism and the effects of it and why it's good, why it's bad, etc. Yeah, so I talked about this very briefly in my problem with wokeness video, which has recently gotten quite a lot of views. So if you've come and subscribed from that video, thank you, and hello, thank you for coming, for joining. And I just wanted to expand on it a bit more in this video because I think it is a topic that I'd like to talk about. And just a disclaimer, I talk about social issues both on here and on Instagram, but I'm not an activist. I don't self-define as an activist. Don't call me an activist. I just talk about the things that I care about. And although admittedly I've done some of the stuff I'll be criticizing, but we learn, we grow, etc. Okay, let's go. Now, online activism, great tool for spreading information. Really, really great tool for that. For reaching and gaining the support of a lot more people than you would just in real life, I suppose. That is one thing that I do think is really good to have come from social media and like activism online. But of course, this also has a dark side in that because anyone and everyone can access information online of like different causes, it kind of works both ways. It means that anyone can spread information on causes. So anyone can sit down and make an infographic about BLM, for example. The problem with infographics is that they can be very deceptive. Like, it's very easy to make a very pretty, professional looking infographic and have lots of people share it because it looks pretty professional and seems to convey information about like a social justice issue that people care about. But the problem is that a lot of these infographics, because of the nature of the format, they only include surface level information, and a lot of the time this isn't nuanced enough to give the whole topic the grounding it deserves, if that makes sense. This leads to the spread of like a lot of misinformation. So people see an infographic that looks professional, with lots of likes and lots of shares, and they think, oh, I should share this is important, without actually taking the time to sit and think or check whether the information in this infographic is accurate. And I think that the reason why maybe people who aren't so well informed are both sharing and creating this kind of information and therefore maybe spreading some misinformation is because of the fact that it has become so trendy to just be a good person online, to look like you're doing good things online. That is a trendy thing these days, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. Basically, this whole idea that you need to show that you're a good person is kind of leading to the spread of misinformation because people are just sharing infographics without looking at whether what the infographic is saying is actually correct. So kind of coming from this whole idea of anyone and everyone being able to share information, one thing that I find very, very interesting about online activism and social media activism is the fact that it blurs the line between the individual and the cause, in that we start to conflate the individual with the cause. Put this, an activist, a social media activist, a prolific one, on a pedestal and make them represent everything that is to do with whichever cause it is that they are advocating for. And I think this is a problem for two reasons. Because first, it puts a lot of pressure on the individual to speak on all issues related to whatever cause they claim to be an advocate for, which can sometimes also lead to the spread of misinformation because it doesn't give them enough time to think things through and form their own opinion and research before everyone is like, I want to know what you think, that kind of thing. It also removes a lot of the agency from those who follow them. Now, by this I mean that by following them, people start to think that liking their posts, reading their posts, sharing their posts is enough. That is what it takes to like do the work or whatever. And it sort of ends there. The individual becomes the cause and nothing actually ends up being done for the cause. It encourages sort of kind of lazy, tepid, half-assed approach to activism, just action, which in my opinion actually counteracts any sort of benefit that learning the information has. Because like, what does it matter that you've read this person's post if all you're going to do is like it and not actually act upon what is implied by said information? The second problem with online activism, putting certain online activists on a pedestal, is the fact that it becomes very, very easy to knock them off. I'm talking about like cancel culture, like whatever you want to call it. When we hail an individual to an almost godly moral standing, we leave little room for them to make any kind of mistakes. And when they inevitably do make mistakes, as they would or will because they are humans, we attack them for it. It becomes a witch hunt because it's not about the cause, it's about them. It just shows the extent to which we centralize the individual, especially in online activism. And I think it sort of demonstrates the fickleness of the whole practice and like of those who engage with it. Because if you were truly supportive of a cause rather than an individual, you'd be able to see past their mistakes because your primary concern would be with the cause. It wouldn't matter necessarily that much what the individual had done or gotten wrong because you'd be too concerned with the cause to spend your time forming a witch hunt against this one person who did something wrong, like we all do things wrong. I've also been wondering why we aren't more skeptical or critical of online activists or activists with a big online following, simply because how palatable a lot of them are to the mainstream media. Think about it. If someone was really fighting for the kind of change that we need to make this world better, would they have magazine features every single week and be working alongside Google? No, they would be ostracized and demonized and criticized by all of these media outlets and corporations because their work would be fundamentally challenging everything that these institutions represent. And yes, I see the importance of highlighting people's work and raising awareness, and I have no problem with the idea of recognition or of activists entering these sorts of spaces and challenging them from like within, I suppose. But I do have a problem when this recognition or spreading of awareness fundamentally contradicts what the activist is supposed to be fighting against. One example of this that I really think about often is the sheer number of anti-oppression activists who have accepted MBEs and OBEs. And if you don't know what those are, they make you it's like a prestigious award in the UK, and you become like a member of a British Empire or a officer of the British Empire, I think, and they're awarded by the Queen. It's really like big, whatever, blah. But like, it doesn't make any sense to want to be recognized as a member of the British Empire, the same empire that represents a lot of the oppression faced by people pretty much in the world. You can't preach about all of these things and say that you're anti-oppression and then want to be welcomed into the institutions which cause these oppressions. It doesn't make any sense. And I don't think you can hold legitimate anti-oppression views and values while simultaneously accepting such awards and recognition and openly joining these institutions. It goes to show how a lot of online activists, or just activists, but actually especially online these days, are doing it for optics. They're doing it for clout. It's about looking like you're a good person, being recognized as a good person, rather than the actual things that they are like fighting for or talking about fighting for. Finally, I'd like to talk about what online activism has actually done to the idea of activism, what activism is. And like I've said, yes, it's made activism as a whole more accessible, which I guess is a good thing, but also a bad thing sometimes. But it's also altered what activism to its core is perceived as. It's watered it down a bit. What you have now is a lot of people repeating the same buzzwords to the point that it's become trendy to be anti-oppression. And although, like, yes, it should be cool to care, it shouldn't be cool to care to the extent that, like, no one actually cares. They're just trying to be cool. And the result of this trendiness has meant that, like, companies and corporations who are contributing to the, like, cycles of oppression, etc., that activists are fighting against are using the same buzzwords because they're trendy. And as we know, like, as soon as you can sell a movement, it's no longer a movement. That should be enough to tell us that we're doing something wrong. And online activism has massively contributed to the sale of oppression. Activists are getting brand deals and corporate partnerships and fame and followers. The whole idea of being an activist has been romanticized, and it has shifted from what it should be, which is the idea of collective action, community, fighting for real change together, to a very egocentric thing concerned primarily with individuals. Like I've said, it looks very good if you care about issues, whether or not you actually do care about issues. And what a lot of social media does is tricking people into thinking that looking like you care about things is far more important than actually caring about these things. And we can see that this happened last year during the BLM, the big movement, in June, when people online were shaming other people for not sharing infographics, and praising those who were, which in my opinion is just very, very silly, because one, not everything has to be shared online. There are so many people who are doing so much great work in their own communities and not sharing it online. And from the perspective of someone who looks for action based on what people are posting online, they would think that these people don't care, when in fact they care more authentically than the vast majority of people. And secondly, surely it's better to have fewer people who are really, really engaged in an issue, willing to fight for it, ready to really act on an issue, rather than having lots of people who are like sort of faking it or even shallowly invested, who aren't going to spend their time working towards change. And again, I'm not saying that everyone on the internet is faking it or whatever, or lying about caring or wanting change, because I do think that people do care. Like, there is just a lack of understanding of what it actually takes to make change, to do things, rather than just to talk about things, to say you're doing things. I don't know. What I am saying is that the way online activism is going is just preventing any kind of change from happening because of its hyper focus on the individual. We're all concerned about what each other is doing and not about how we can mobilize together to do big things. Yeah, anyway, I'm ranting, but how we overcome this, I honestly don't really know. I want to say abolish the internet, but it's very far gone, so I don't know what to say. But I think a great start would be for all of us. I know I've been talking about not thinking about the individual, but we need to just rewind. All of us need to zoom out, think about how and why it is we engage with online activism, and whether it's actually working to achieve the kind of justice that we just keep talking about. And from that, just see where we go, because right now it's a mess and it's not great to see. I'd love to know your thoughts on online activism, whether it's useful, not useful, etc. Yeah, just let me know. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.